I would like to introduce our very first session, and that will be led by Dr. Sasha High, who is an internist and obesity physician. She completed her training at the University of Toronto. She is the founder of High Metabolic Clinic, a multidisciplinary obesity telemedicine clinic available to patients across Ontario. She also runs a Canada-wide weight loss coaching program for women who struggle with emotional and binge eating. She is an international speaker, social media educator. You can find her at Sasha High MD on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And she is also host of High on Life podcast. Come on up, Sasha.
All right. So we're going to get up on our feet one more time and help Sasha with some energy. There we go. There we go.
I said I wasn't going to dance. You did it. I told them I wasn't going to dance. I emailed Preeti. I'm like, I do not dance, but I got up here and I danced. And it's for you. Thank you so much. All right, it's so great to be with you all today in person, and for those of you who are joining us online as well, such a great community. I've already seen some familiar faces, and it's been so good connecting. It is nice to connect in person, I have to say. It's really, really special. Well, I'm really excited to kick off this morning. I'm calling this a masterclass. When Preeti contacted me, she was like, I want you to do this Medicine and Mindset Masterclass that you give, and I'm actually gonna I want this to be where you actually like apply, and you can do this, and you can go home with something tangible. So I've actually given you some resources. I'm going to link it. It's on my website where you can download these slides. I've got some extra resources for you there. So if you're someone who likes to like take notes and stuff, I've got you. I'm that person. So it's all going to be there. All right, here are some of my disclosures. I do a lot of speaking. I really enjoy the speaking. I really enjoy the educating. All right, here's what I want to cover today. I want to explain what am I talking about. Like what am I talking about when I say medicine and mindset, right? And really it's going to be about fixing the gap between knowing and doing. And then I'm going to offer some ways that we can reframe our mindset in 3 really common scenarios that I see with my patients. And then finally, we're going to talk about how we can upgrade some of our thinking. This morning, I want to help us all become better thinkers, more conscious thinkers, so we can level up our mindset, because our mindset is what really determines our success in everything. Right at the bottom of this slide, that is the link if you want to just like write that down, where you will find these slides, and there's some extra resources there as well. Okay, so we're here understanding now that obesity is complex, the pathophysiology is complex. There's a lot more going on than what we used to think of, just like everyone should just eat less and exercise more, right? We understand there's biology, there's genetics, there's hormones, and hopefully I'm kind of preaching to the converted in this audience today. But what I want to suggest is that not only is the pathophysiology of obesity complex, but the psychology of healthy behaviors is equally complex. What am I saying when I say that? Well, have you ever wondered why it's like not our default position to all just choose the healthy way? Like all of us want to exercise daily and eat only healthy foods. Like why is that not the case? Is it like all of us are lazy and unmotivated? No, not at all. There's a lot behind it. So there's toxic diet culture that we've all been exposed to, right? There's mentalities of like the scale is the only thing that matters, so that creates scale obsession. There's the images that we see on Instagram of what it's supposed to look like, what a body is supposed to look like, what what healthy behaviors are supposed to look like, these really unrealistic standards that are set up in what we see in media and social media. Then we struggle with common cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are just thought errors. It's autopilot thoughts that we all have, but aren't really helpful. And a really common one I'm going to cover today is all or nothing thinking, okay? Black and white thinking. We've got, we struggle with internalized weight bias, learned helplessness. Maybe you've dieted many, many times, and the course of failed diets has set you up to be like, oh, like I can't do this, right? Even though it's the diet that failed you. But oftentimes it becomes this internalized bias and learned helplessness. And then we've got busy lives. Life is stressful and it's busy, and fitting in that workout or your meal planning is hard, right? And so all of this is going on in the background. And I would propose that in order to be really successful in managing obesity and in just creating our best health and our best overall wellness, we have to kind of consider all of these things. We need to really consider the psychology behind our health habits. So that's what I'm trying to talk about today. Now, I want to frame this in the context of what we already know, which is the 3 pillars from the Obesity Canada guidelines. So I would imagine many of you have seen this sort of slide before. The 3 pillars, and I believe Dr. Sean Wharton was a big part of kind of putting this together as well. So the 3 pillars are how do we treat obesity? We've got the behavioral and psychological skills, then we've got medical treatment or pharmacotherapy, and bariatric surgery. I'm just showing this to you because I want to point out how mindset and medicine fits in. I would say that the medical part, we're getting better at these days. We have better medications coming out, which is amazing. More access to care, hopefully coming, more insurance coverage, hopefully coming for medical treatment. So pharmacotherapy and bariatric surgery, that's the medicine side. Okay, and that's the part I think we're pretty good at and improving. I know we're not quite there yet. But then there's the mindset, and that's what I would say is the behavioral and the psychological skills. It's how do we get our head in the game, because this is a long-term journey, right? And the beautiful thing is that mental training is something we can all do. So we can all actually empower our mindset. Even if you're not familiar with this, you've never thought about your thoughts before, we can all actually work on this mental training. So the mindset is filling the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing what we know to do, right? My, general thought is that most people understand what healthy food is. Most people understand that we should move our bodies. There's the guidelines of 200 minutes every week. We should, I'm going to put that in quotes, okay, air quotes. We should do all of these things. But where is the gap of why do we not do what we know that we should be doing, right? What's that? And this is the common challenge that I often find. I know what I should be eating, I'm just not doing it. Right? Again, it's not because of a willpower issue or a laziness factor, although people tell me that. I have patients who are like, I think I'm just lazy. I'm like, there's no evidence that you're lazy. Look at the rest of your life. You're not a lazy person, so why is that the conclusion? So we have to figure out where that gap is. So if you're someone who is experiencing this and you've tried to change your behavior, okay, and this is the clue. If you've tried to change behavior and maybe you do it for a week or two and then you slip back and you're like, oh, can't do it, and you've tried this a few times, what I'll suggest is that focusing on the behavior isn't the problem. What we need to get to is the thoughts and the feelings that are behind our actions. So every action that we take, whether it's an action or an inaction, not taking action, is driven, it's rooted in our thoughts. Otherwise, you can think of them as beliefs, how we think about life and how we think about ourselves and how we think about our health behaviors, and then the feelings or emotions that those thoughts generate, because we take action from our emotions. And anyone who's like, no, I'm not an emotional being. I was that. I was like, no, I'm not emotional, I'm very logical. But no, as human beings, we actually are emotional beings, and we take action from that place. So today is about bringing some more awareness to it. And this is why I love this field, because as much as obesity is a brain-based condition, our health behaviors all start in our mind. So it's just a fascinating area to work in. Okay, let's take a look at that together. We're going to talk about reframing 3 common scenarios. Now my biggest challenge as I was preparing for this morning was deciding which 3 I was going to choose, because we really could go over thousands of different scenarios where we can reframe how we're thinking, but we're going to go with the 3 most common. So all or nothing thinking, overvaluing the scale, and emotional eating. All right, starting with all or nothing thinking. I'm gonna suggest that this really stems from toxic diet culture. If you've done any sort of dieting, maybe you've been in a commercial weight loss program where it was like, you have to stick to this diet perfectly, and if you don't, you get shamed for it. Like, how dare you? Don't even come. I've had patients tell me they've been told, don't even come back if you're gonna cheat on this diet, right? That kind of shame-based motivation, shall we say, number 1 is horrible. Number 2 doesn't work long term. And what that results in is this idea that we have to be perfect. And the problem with that is none of us are perfect, right? So it's inherently flawed to think that we're going to be perfect with our health behaviors for the rest of our lives, every single day, always. So what this sounds like, if we're looking at our thinking, is, ugh, I ate the brownie. Such a screw up. I might as well just keep eating and start over again on Monday, right? Has anyone had thoughts like that? Just me? Right. Okay, or, you planned your workout, and then your day goes late at work. Oh, I can't get that 60 minutes in. Forget it. I'll just exercise later. Exercise the next time, right? And here's the problem. Between white and black, there's a whole lot of gray in between. But when we're only focused on the black and the white thinking, we miss the gray, right? We miss all of the opportunities for the middle. And the issue with perfection, it is the biggest killer of consistency, right? And I think many, many people will say that my biggest challenge is I'm just not really consistent with my health behaviors. I wonder if it's because you're trying to be perfect. And what would it look like to practice the gray? Okay? So that's really what I want to suggest is the solution, is learning to live in the gray, learning to set more realistic goals perhaps, and I'm going to teach you a concept called 1% upgrades. So what does this look like? I'm going to give you a nice framework that I like for setting goals. Okay? It's called WHOOP, and maybe some of you have seen this. It's around in the business world as well. So WHOOP stands for your wish, outcome, obstacle, and your plan. So your wish, what is the goal that you want? Okay? Maybe you really want, I need to increase activity. I'm working from home. I spend, 8 hours of my day sitting. I want to increase my activity. Outcome is, why is that important to you? And really exploring your why. Why do you want to increase activity? Why do you want to get your body moving? Why is that valuable to you? Not because your doctor told you to, not because you think it's the right thing to do. Why is that important to you? The obstacle is the part that so many people miss with goals, right? We forget that there's going to be obstacles. Of course there are. And if we can anticipate them ahead of time, it's less of a shock, and then we can kind of strategize. So what do you think could get in the way? Well, like my kids, I've got their activities. I know I'll be tired. Maybe my work often schedules stuff in when I plan it out. If you can anticipate your obstacles, then you can move on to P, which is plan. What's the realistic plan to handle all of these obstacles so that you can get this goal to happen? And then the +4 is the real kicker here, okay? The +4 is, on a scale from 1 to 4, how confident are you that you can actually execute on this plan? We're not fussing around with 1 to 10, because 5, 6, what does that even mean? 1 is you're just saying this plan because you feel like it's the right thing to do, but you know you're not going to follow through. 4 is 100% confident, okay? You want to judge, where are you on that scale from 1 to 4? If you're anything less than a 4, you go back to the beginning, you cut your goal in half, and you start again, okay? That's how this works. So we want to set goals that we're totally confident that we can do. This may look like, I've had patients work on, my goal to get moving is I just want to get out my door and go to the mailbox and get my mail down the street and come back. Okay, now here's the challenge, right? Your brain will tell you, what's that going to do? That's not going to make you lose weight, like walking to the mailbox and back. Not the point. The point is we're working on increasing movement. And if we can start setting goals that we're confident we can follow through on, then you can build upon that. Okay? So that's the beauty of setting realistic goals, is we're just building on small stepping stones. And really the idea is if we can aim for those 1% upgrades, not the perfection, not all or nothing thinking, not where you have to overhaul your entire diet tomorrow, then you can actually start making steps forward. So I just want to plant in your mind the idea of B- work. Okay, anyone who is like an A+ student like me, you struggle with this one. I get it. B- work in life is good enough. Okay, so some thoughts to practice to really get this idea of B- work, practicing the gray, aiming for getting away from that all or nothing thinking is I can always make my next best choice. So you can't get your 60-minute workout in? All right, maybe when I get home I'm going to park my car and I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk around the block. That's it, because that's me showing up for myself with consistency of movement, even when it's not perfect. I said to one of my clients this week, she was really struggling with her exercise, and she was thinking about like what it should look like. And I said to her, I was like, you know what, this one, she really struggled with 1%. She's like, well, that's not good enough. 1% isn't enough. And I was like, well, the 1% is better than the 0% that you're doing when you're thinking about the 100% that you should be doing, right? It's amazing how that works. All right, let's go to number 2, overvaluing the scale. What does this sound like? I'm so frustrated. I've been working so hard and the scale hasn't even budged. What is the point of doing this, right? Really, really common thought that I hear from my patients. Now here's the problem with this kind of thought, which I'm gonna suggest is called a saboteur thought, okay? So we all have a wise mind and then a very emotional mind. And when the wise mind is, you can call it your sage mind, okay? You make great choices from your wise mind. But then that emotional mind is the saboteur mind, where we kind of don't make our best choices. We don't show up as our best selves. So let's go over, this is called the thought model. And it really just shows us the impact of our thinking on our actions and our results. So the prompting event, we all have life events that happen. Prompting event is the scale hasn't budged in 3 weeks, okay? So the scale hasn't moved. And your thoughts may be, I'm so frustrated. What is the point of working so hard? I can never lose weight. And when you think those thoughts, you generate your emotions, which are you feel defeated, you feel like a failure, maybe you're frustrated, and from those emotions is where you take action. The actions might be you go to the fridge, because what's the point of trying so hard? You know, you've been wanting to eat whatever, so why restrict anymore? Maybe you don't go for the walk that you were planning. And the thing is that there's always consequences to our actions. There's some that are positively reinforcing, because we wouldn't take actions that had no benefit to us, right? So if you go to the fridge and you eat, I don't know, let's say you eat a brownie, okay? There is some positive reinforcement to that behavior that encourages you to do that behavior, right? The positive reinforcement is you feel good temporarily, right? You get a little bit of pleasure, you kind of feel comforted perhaps by the food, because that's what food does. But the consequence, the negative consequence, is you reinforce this belief that weight loss is just impossible for you. You can never do this. You give up on your health behaviors and you feel worse about yourself. And all of this from how our brain, the autopilot thoughts that our brain has offered about a prompting event. Okay? Here's the powerful part though, is we have the ability to notice these thoughts and decide to think differently. And that's the beauty of being human, is that we can actually be really intentional about our thinking. And that's the only place we have power, because in that moment you can't change the scale, right? But what you can change is what's going on for you and how you're thinking about it and your experience of it. And you can shift from being in that saboteur mindset, where self-sabotaging actions are the result, to being in the sage mindset. Now, how do you know you're in a saboteur mindset? I want you to imagine any time that you are kind of feeling those like emotions, like defeated, like a failure, you're frustrated, you're probably in a saboteur mindset. So let that just be a cue for you, not to shame yourself or judge yourself, but just to notice, okay, I think I'm probably in a saboteur mindset. The question you're gonna ask yourself is, what else is true? Sure, the scale hasn't moved in 3 weeks. You might feel frustrated, you might have, some certain thoughts about that, but what else is true? Well, what else is true is when I eat well, I don't feel bloated, I have more energy, I feel really good in my body when I go for a walk, and I've noticed all of these other improvements. So those are the non-scale victories. I'm sure many of you have heard of NSVs, right? So you ask yourself what else is true, and you find other thoughts that are equally true, but our brain doesn't naturally go to them. Our brain has a negativity bias, right? So it's work to look for those other thoughts that are going to generate more positive emotions. So thoughts to practice, well, even though I haven't lost weight, I haven't gained any. And actually, weight stability is the win, right? I can't tell you how many patients who have lost weight, but then it plateaus, which is the goal, right? Which is the goal of successful weight management. They miss the win because they're just, they don't see the plateau as that's the weight stability. You're living in the win, but you might miss it if you don't really look for it, if you don't see it and practice retraining your thinking. All right, number 3, emotional eating. Emotional eating is we eat to avoid negative feelings, to distract or self-soothe, but we also eat to create positive feelings. Now, for anyone who's like, I'm not an emotional eater, consider whether you've eaten just for fun, whether you've eaten because it just tastes good. I just really like food. All of those times, I would say it's actually emotional eating because you're creating an experience with the food, and the food is not being used necessarily for nutritional purposes. And by the way, we're all emotional eaters. Pretty much 100% of us, right? Because if physical hunger isn't the problem, any other eating is probably emotional eating, but we have to question whether food is going to be the right solution in that situation. And here's the challenge that so many people have experienced is that diets don't solve emotional eating because diets talk about food. Emotional eating really has very little to do with food and everything to do with learning how to regulate and care for our thoughts and our feelings. So emotional eating, let's call that the behavior, okay? It's like the tip of the iceberg. And when you focus on which diet is going to solve this, maybe if I just calorie count more, maybe if I just use this app and track my macros, I won't emotionally eat. The problem is that that is based on the presumption that we all make food decisions purely on a data-driven, knowledge-driven basis, which we all know is not the case. No one makes decisions at 9 o'clock at night based on, what's best for me in this moment. It's like, what's going to taste good? What's going to make me feel better, right? And so we have to look deeper at the bottom part of the iceberg, which is the thoughts and the feelings that are driving the behavior as well as the reinforcing consequences. So this is a big area. It's a huge area. But I'll just offer you like one little entryway that you can start working on, okay? The key is we have to start by getting out of autopilot. When we're in autopilot, when we have no awareness of our behaviors, right, we can call it mindless snacking, then we can't take action because you can't change something that you're not aware of. So how do we get out of autopilot? Well, I want you to just for a moment, we're going to just consider your high-risk time of day where you're most likely to eat something that maybe isn't on your plan, overeat, snack, okay? So just go to that place for a second. Imagine what's happening. What time of day is it? Where are you? Just give you a second. Mine is 8 o'clock at night. I've put my kids to bed, and I'm coming. I can literally picture myself. I walk down the stairs, and that's when my brain's like, now it's snack time, right? Kids are asleep, snack time. So that's my cue, okay? So I want you to think of that as your cue. And when that happens is your opportunity, the moment of opportunity to introduce what's called the compassion pause. And the compassion pause is just taking a moment to ask yourself 2 questions. Am I really hungry right now? If yes, you absolutely have the right to eat because your body needs food when you're hungry. But if you're not hungry, then the second question is, what am I truly needing right now? Okay. So just by introducing awareness and a little bit of pause, we can actually ask ourselves what we're truly, truly needing. And oftentimes, we'll discover that food isn't necessarily the answer. Maybe we need to go to bed because we're just exhausted. Maybe we need to reach out to our spouse because we've kind of been in a fight and that's really what's driving the eating behavior. Maybe we need to call a friend. Maybe we need to go take a bath. I don't know what the solution is because that part is going to be so individual, but the only way that you will know the solution is by actually asking yourself the question, okay? So 2 questions that you can ask by creating that compassion pause. As I said, this is a really big area. Dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, offers tons of tools that help with emotional eating, and I just wanted to give you these 2 books. If this isn't something that you can access, you don't have a healthcare practitioner, it's amazing that there are a lot of self-directed resources out there. These are 2 books that I like. I have linked them on the website that I'm going to offer you afterwards as well to help with emotional regulation. Okay, we're going to close with some thought upgrades. So as I said at the very start, what I want us to be looking at is how do we upgrade our thinking, become more conscious thinkers, better thinkers. So I'm just going to offer you some suggestions, but the key with thinking is it has to be really individual, right? So I'm going to offer you these suggestions, but I would suggest that you go home and one of the exercises I'm going to give you is just how do you want to think about yourself, your ability to manage your weight, to engage in healthy behaviors. Write all that down and see if there's anywhere where you need to make some thought upgrades. And because it has to be your own. You have to believe the thoughts in order for them to actually really shift your emotional experience. So one thought upgrade, I can't eat that. That'll make me gain weight. This is very much that restrictive mindset that comes from diet culture, right? So an upgrade would be recognizing that as an adult, you can absolutely eat anything that you want, but what do you want to choose for yourself right now? So automatically, it goes from the food having all the power, I can't eat that, that's gonna make me lose weight, it has all this power over me, to now you're the one who has power, what do I choose? When I'm caring for myself, when I love myself, what do I want to choose in this moment? Number 2, everyone else is eating it, so I should be able to also. Other variations of this sound like it's not fair. How come no one else has to work at this as hard as I do? Yeah, I see some nodding, and I have coached many people through this. So certainly sounds justified, right? We can kind of understand how that thought sounds really justified. Like, oh, I see what other people are eating. They seem to be able to eat whatever they want at the restaurant, and I have to think about it, and why is this? It's not fair. The problem is that thinking doesn't serve you in any way, right? It doesn't make you show up better, or you show up as the version that you want to be, or you continue to stick with your goals. So one option could be, what other people's choices don't impact me. This is truly important to me. So just reminding yourself, like, this is you. This is about your journey. This is about taking care of you. This is because you matter. So how do you want to show up for yourself? I deserve this, right? The classic permission thought. I've had a hard day. My kids have been brutal. Work is super stressful. I deserve this food. You definitely deserve something. The question is, what is it that you're deserving of? I deserve to take care of my body. I deserve to meet my emotional needs. I deserve this moment of self-care. I deserve to just take a few minutes by myself without kids screaming in the background to care for me. So consider, what is it that you're actually deserving of? I shouldn't have to deprive myself. Classic restriction thought. Could be reframed to, I am choosing, right? Again, it's about taking the power back into your own hands and making this about your choice. Not this external diet that told me this is how I should be eating, not my doctor told me this is what I should do, or anyone else, but this is what I am choosing for me, because I matter. I'm choosing to fuel my body with nourishing foods. And last one, I should really go for a walk. Okay, and I said it with all the emotion that thought comes with, right? I should really go for a walk. I know I should get my workout in. That is not motivating whatsoever. No one wants to go for a walk when we're thinking about it like that, right? But I get to move my body, or I choose to, I want to. Any of those, because oftentimes when we actually go for the walk, we feel so much better, we have more energy afterwards, our mental health's better, like all of these benefits that we forget about when we're thinking like this, I should really go for a walk. So a reframe, I get to move my body, and I know I'm going to feel so much better afterwards, right? Little shifts like this in our self-talk, because really that's what mindset is. It's our self-talk. Little shifts change our experience, which is our emotions and our feelings, which therefore make the behavioral choices, how we show up with our actions or inactions, that much easier. Our mindset is behind why we do what we do, and why we don't do what we want to be doing also. Some really, really great books that I love, they have nothing to do with managing weight necessarily, but I think that for many people, we have enough information about food, right? You don't need more Pinterest recipes about like clean eating. We've got all that covered, right? What we need to do is really work on the mindset piece. So all of these books are great resources, great places to start. I will link more on the website as well. All right, what are the key takeaways that you can apply today? Because remember, knowledge doesn't transform. Taking action is what transforms. So here's where I want to encourage you to take action. Number one, remembering consistency beats perfection. So where can you, everyone think right now, we all can do this, right? Where can you make a 1% upgrade today? Not a 100% upgrade, a 1% upgrade, and then celebrate yourself for doing it. So it's that positive feedback that we can offer ourselves of like, yes, you know what? This 1% upgrade was me showing up for me today. Number 2 is when you find yourself in that saboteur mindset, ask yourself what else is true. Number 3 is to practice the compassion pause, right? Remember your cue. So we all thought about our high-risk time. My cue is walking down the stairs. I wonder what your cue is. And when that cue comes up, that's your moment. Practice the compassion pause. Am I really hungry? What am I really needing right now? And then the last one, what do you want to believe about your ability to transform your health habits? Write that down. Write that down and rehearse it, because the beautiful thing about our thinking and what we believe about ourselves, did you know that beliefs are just thoughts you've had so many times that you just assume that they're true? And so if we can create new beliefs by just practicing new thoughts, how powerful is that? And how much more are we going to show up as the people that we want to be? All right, thank you so much. Again, that's the website where I've offered all of those resources that you can pick up. And I would love to, if there's anyone here or even online that is like wanting some coaching and we can practice this in real time, I think we have a couple minutes that we could potentially do that. So thank you so much for your attention. It's been great to be with you today. Oh, we've got some questions online. All right. Yes, Jen.
Hi there. I've got a question from one of the online participants.
Love it.
Who said, I heard that Wegovy will be in Canada in May. Anyone know if that is true? How much will it cost? And whether insurance plans will cover it?
Okay. Well, we're going right to the medicine aspect. We've skipped over mindset. Okay. Yeah, we don't know firm dates. And I don't think we know information about like all of the insurance coverage yet. Typically with the insurance companies, it tends to be like a class effect. So if they cover the anti-obesity drug class category, like Saxenda and Contrave, then they should cover on-label indication with Wegovy, hopefully. But it does take a little bit of time, right, for the company to work that out with the insurance companies as well. Anyone else have any questions? I love it. Yes, let's do it. This is my jam.
Is my mic on? Okay, great. So, I mean, I wish I had a mini version of you to carry around with me. That would be really helpful. But
my podcast. Just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. When you're talking about practicing compassion, like the immediate scenario that comes to mind for me, which I find really challenging because it usually involves I'm out in the evening, I'm at a get-together with friends, we're enjoying some wine and cheese and really talking and having a good time. So it's a really wonderful, positive experience. I've eaten, so I technically should feel full. And when I get home, no matter what time it is, like if it's 10, which is actually usually when I go home, or if it's 12, I just immediately, I walk into the house and I am starving. What is happening to me? and I have to say, sometimes I can use some of these techniques and it helps me realize that maybe I'm tired or whatever. So I don't know, maybe we could practice on that scenario?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
The first question I would ask is, how do you know you're starving? What is the physical sensation? Because we want to differentiate between physical hunger and psychological hunger. So let's tap into, go back to the last time that happened. What was going on for you in your body that your brain interpreted as I'm starving?
Ooh, I feel like it really was a lot in my mind now that you put it in that context. It's kind of like, I feel like I deserve it. Like I went out, I enjoyed myself, I felt good about myself, and now I deserve a treat. Maybe it's a little bit about that. So maybe that, I don't really feel physically hungry.
Perfect,
I feel
yeah.
mentally hungry.
Yeah, okay, so that's a really important differentiator, is always just distinguishing between, is this physical hunger, which manifests as like maybe your stomach feels a bit hollow, there's that grumbling, and it's gradual, it slowly comes on and it builds, and really the test is called the protein test. Would I eat a piece of chicken or a hard-boiled egg right now? Because if you're truly hungry, kind of anything will suffice. Versus psychological hunger, which Rachel's describing, is it's really quick, it's cue mediated, right? It's triggered by your environment stepping in the door, and it's often a very specific food, and you kind of mentioned reward, so for you, like some people it's sweet, some people it's salty, but there's typically a specific food.
It's both.
Okay. Both sweet and salty. Yeah. So when we're wanting specific foods, that tells us this isn't physical hunger that we're dealing with. This is psychological hunger. And that's, like, we have to start with that distinguishing between those two. So then the question is, so then most likely for you, this is a conditioned behavior. Conditioned behavior meaning that you've done it a few times, so your brain has just learned that when you step in the door from going out with your friends, it just reminds you that this is what you do, like this is when the reward comes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, can you, do you know what emotional state you're in at that time? Like, name 2 emotions.
I feel satisfied, like happy that I spent that time with friends, and tired probably because I'm a morning person. So I don't know, those are probably not really emotions, right? Like,
yeah, tired, satisfied. No, that's fair.
okay.
Was there any restriction happening when you were out with your friends?
Usually it is for me because I think as a person that lives in a larger body and has struggled with weight my entire life, then there is that sort of feeling that I'm around friends. I don't want to look like I'm eating too much.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, overeating behaviors are because of subtle restriction, whether intentional or unintentional restriction that's happened earlier in that day, right? And so if you've gone out, Rachel, and you've kind of been like, I can't eat this, like I need to like look like I'm eating really well, or whatever's going on in the background, the natural response to that restriction is that now I'm gonna come home and now, okay, now I get to eat, right? Right.
Yeah, I do feel like that aha, like you just said, like, okay, I'm in my place now.
Yeah. So how would you want to handle that? So knowing that the restriction is actually what's leading to the overeating happening later on, what would you say, like what would be a strategy you want to try?
I still feel like I want to restrict because usually if it's an evening with friends, there's a lot of food that probably I don't want to eat. They're not really foods that I want to put in my body. Also, I think probably the alcohol inhibits my ability to make really sound decisions. So I want to feel like I want to come home and feel like I'm full, I'm nourished, and really now it's about getting ready for bed. So I'd like to shift from, what kind of snacks do I have available to, okay, now I really want to kind of prepare myself for sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and notice what Rachel said. She wants to come home and feel really satisfied. It's hard to come home and feel satisfied if you spent the whole evening restricting yourself. Right? And this is how backwards this often works, right? We think like, I'm going to eat super clean when I go out, and then we come home and we like eat the whole fridge, right? And it's like, it's backwards. It doesn't make sense. Like that actually doesn't work. It's not giving me the outcome that I want, but our brain plays tricks on us like that. So it would be really switching around how you show up when you go out with your friends. Now that's not saying go out and eat everything when you go out with your friends at all, but go in with a plan where you're like, you know what, I'm making choices where yes, I'm honoring my desire to be healthy, and I'm also going to enjoy because I'm going out and I want to come home feeling satisfied. So if you shifted to that frame of mind going into it, would that change your food decisions when you went there?
It would, and I've actually practiced that a few times in the past, but I do feel like I need to be reminded of that, which is why I said I'd like to have a pocket version of you. I have found that worked really well in the past when I think about how do I want to show up when I'm with my friends. And maybe I also need to extend that thinking to when I come home, I want to spend that time to get ready for bed so that I'm already mentally prepared for that when I walk in the door.
Yeah. And I think that just kind of to wrap this up, I would say when we plan things ahead of time, that's where we can be in that wise mind, that sage mind choice, right? So it might be as you're planning to go out with your friends, how do I want this night to play out? Right? Rather than just like winging it, like, I hope I have enough willpower to just like really restrict because I need to like not eat and dieting, right? And then that backfires. Go in with a really realistic, that's a loving plan where you're gonna actually enjoy the night and balance those values of wanting to be sticking with your health plan and wanting to enjoy that time with your friends, but also anticipate, and when I get home, I can remind myself, I feel satisfied because I had half of that dessert that I absolutely enjoyed with no guilt, right? Guilt is a big driver also. If you're carrying around guilt, that's a big driver for overeating as well. So just notice that too. And where you can walk in and practice those thoughts of like, what a great night. I feel really satisfied. I'm looking forward to my nighttime routine and getting myself into bed, right? So it's just that mental rehearsal that can happen before the event itself, so that prompting event, and before your high risk time as well.
Yeah.
helpful.
I love that. Thank you. I'm a project manager, so I'm good with planning. So I will do that. And I love the idea of living in the gray.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes. Sandra. Oh. Go for it, Andrew. Oh.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. Appreciate the presentation. So I think a narrative that I tell myself a lot is that I'm a food addict, right? And I appreciate, I think some of your advice will likely resonate again, and you may give similar sort of counsel in my scenario, is I'm coming home from work, I'm on the GO train, I'm pulling into Georgetown, and the pull, the draw, I am hungry. It's dinner time,
Yep.
right? And so I do feel hunger pangs, but then the pull, and I know I have food at home. Cognitively, I know, I have privilege that I have a fridge full of food. I usually have a plan, but the pull to those less healthy options and places is just so strong. I think that's psychological or emotional. That the pull to the Subway or to McDonald's or to one of those less healthy options is just so unavoidable. And the shame that I feel of not being able to resist that pull,
Yeah.
even though I know I'm half an hour out from a healthy meal. How would you advise that person of myself to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, Andrew, thank you so much for being really vulnerable about that. It's hard in this environment, but I think so good on you. Two things I want to address. I want to come back to I am a food addict. I'm going to park that for a second. The first thing I think is validating that everything you're experiencing is 100% normal. Because here's the shame is the aspect I want to touch on, because the shame, that emotion, shame never motivates healthy behaviors, ever, right? Anyone, if you have children, when your children are feeling ashamed, they show up and just bad behavior, right? So we want to address that. And I think the shame is rooted in, I have a pull, there's something wrong with me that I am drawn to going to McDonald's when I know, I know better, right? So I would say number one is like normalizing. Of course, like McDonald's literally makes their money because they've learned how to hijack your brain to desire those foods. Everything that your brain is doing is 100% normal human behavior, normal biological drive, right? And so just taking the sting of this must mean that I'm a failure, that there's something wrong with me, just like validating this experience is normal, okay? And then once you've validated that and we can kind of move shame off of the table as the primary driving emotion, then I would turn it around on you and just say, if we know that that is a challenging time, and you were thinking about how you could prepare yourself ahead of time, what would that look like? What are some strategies you could think of so that when you're on the GO train and you are like seriously hungry, right? It's end of day, it's dinner time, you are hungry. Is there anything that you could do maybe that would just dial down the intensity of the hunger in that moment so that you could get through that? What do you think?
Gonna get your steps in. Maybe it's having a healthy snack option on the train and having something in my bag, something I don't do, right? I eat on a fairly traditional mindset schedule, not necessarily on the one that's most healthy in terms of, when you're hungry, you eat, or whatever program or philosophy you go to. So maybe having something in the bag that I could go to might help the physical side of things.
Yeah.
Do you think that will also help the psychological?
I think we have to tackle both, right? So I think that like low-hanging fruit is get yourself into a state that is going to allow you to have your brain functioning at the level that you want to be functioning, right? If if your blood sugar is really riding a roller coaster and you're at a low because it's been 5 hours since your last meal, like it's just you're primed for a high-risk situation there. So let's address that first. Okay, amazing. I love that idea. So you bring a healthy snack with you that you can have in that moment when you're on the GO train. And then the second step is reminding yourself, everything I'm experiencing is normal. Cravings are normal. There's nothing wrong with me, right? Even that even without like shifting to more positive thinking, just validating that, I think will actually take the sting of shame and empower you a little bit more to be like, and you know what, I know dinner's on the table. I know that, you know, I can wait this one out. I can do one more great choice today, right? Not even I can never snack again every single day at 4 p.m. coming home on the GO train. It's too much. Today, can I make another great choice? Yeah, because I had my healthy snack, and I know that for today I can do this. And then that's how it happens, right? It's literally just a day at a time, and then you've got a few days behind your belt, and you're like, oh, now you've got a little bit of confidence. Actually, I can do this, okay? So I think those are some suggestions that I'd offer. Let me come back to the identity piece, okay? I coach a lot about identity. I think our identity determines how we show up. What am I talking about when I say identity? Identity is what we believe about ourselves. I personally would wonder whether you telling yourself that you're a food addict in the present tense is benefiting how you're showing up. And I don't know the right answer, but yeah, you're saying no, it's not. Because here's the thing. Who we believe we are fully determines how we show up every day with our actions or our behaviors, because we live out what we believe about ourselves, right? So when you're walking around thinking I'm a food addict, that means that I act according to someone who is a food addict. So a shift, because the problem when people are trying to shift their thinking is they think now, like, I'm not a food addict, let me just go to the opposite. Like, I have total control around food. And you don't believe it. And so you're like, I'm just like BSing kind of myself, right? So that doesn't work. So what we do is we use something called ladder thoughts or bridge thoughts. And what these are little like segues, shall we say, okay? So I am a food addict could be segued to, I have struggled with food addiction in the past. And now I am working towards fill in that blank. Right? So you're not saying, I'm no longer a food addict, this is not something that I identify with, but it's saying, I acknowledge certain things from my past, but that doesn't necessarily have to determine who I am today, or who I'm going to be tomorrow, or how I'm going to show up in my future, right? And so it's a slow shift from, I'm a food addict, to, I have total freedom and control around food. What are all of the segueing thoughts, or those bridge thoughts that can move and slowly shift that identity? And this is where even affirming yourself and celebrating your healthy behaviors, that's one way of creating more confidence in those bridge thoughts. What do I mean by that? Let's say Monday, when you're coming home, you do the healthy snack and you don't go to McDonald's and you go home and you eat your meal. It's so easy to just be like, oh, well, it's only one day. Like, I'm going to struggle again tomorrow. Like, this has been a pattern for my entire life. Like, and so we discount the positives so often, right? It's that negativity bias of our brain. So you have to acknowledge, you recognize that as the win. All right, today I showed up and I practiced these skills, right? I practiced the skill of planning ahead of time. I practiced the skill of validating, normalizing my thoughts, creating a bit of distance. I noticed a reduction in the shame. You give yourself that positive feedback. That's a little confidence building block that now you've got in your belt, and you're building that confidence over time. And that, like, it's really those little 1% that add up and accumulate. Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew.
We're out of time, so I'll just say I really appreciate your presentation and your ability to take something as complex as weight management and break it down for us so that we can succeed at it. That's what I think you've shown us today.
Awesome.
But
Thank you so much.